Hello YouTube, it's Lawrence again with part 8 of Troubles in the Family, which at this rate could go on to 116 parts, I should imagine. Now where were we? 1971 becomes 1972. Things were alright for a while. They're reasonably stable, but my father isn't happy in his new role of bar steward, to which he was demoted for having committed a misdemeanour on the base. Then in 1972, just after the Christmas of 1971, my father did a disappearing act. It was later found out that he was still gambling, and he just went AWOL for about a month. Nobody knew where he was. There was a rumour that he'd committed suicide. My mother was beside herself. Which she still got support from the RAF personnel, and he was found in London and subsequently brought back to the RAF base at Wittering. The Royal Air Force then decided that they'd had enough of his antics, and he was dismissed. He was thrown out. We had then no roof over our head. We had to get off the base. My mother, for some bizarre reason, decided to stick by him. I think for the greater good of me, not that it was doing me any good, because we were all upskittled again. I was getting on better at school. Obviously I had to, there was all the upheaval of moving. I had to change schools. We returned to my mother's original hometown, a small market town in Lincolnshire, and we were living in a rented one-bedroomed flat, or apartment as you Americans call them. It was very basic. We're talking 1972. There was a huge great boiler in the kitchen, which was the where we got all the hot water from and what have you. We had a very old black and white television set, a mono record player, and that was about it. A couple of chairs and a beaten up old sofa, and my mother had to be strong for me. There were murmurings in the rest of the family. You know, they understood what had happened, and my uncle, who had originally helped my mother, he washed his hands of us. Again, bad association. He didn't want to know anymore, and he said he didn't want to speak to my mother ever again. He sort of, for some reason, turned funny and blamed my mother for all that had gone off. I don't think my mother helped herself by standing by him. I think that's what the family were disgusted with. They wanted her to divorce him and get a clean break, which eventually she did, but it took her a lot of courage to get round to doing it. He was still gambling. He was a compulsive gambler. He wasn't going to change. He needed help, and he refused to get any help. So our RAF days were cut short. My father then went out looking for work, and he eventually got a very humble position in a local wallpaper factory. It was nothing grand, but it was about putting food on the table and keeping clothes on my back. I was only 8 years old. My mother, who always worked anyway, she was always been a very hard worker, she would do anything. She went out, she worked at a fish and chip shop, frying fish. She cleaned other people's houses. She worked part-time in a local supermarket. She did everything she could to keep us together. Everything. And sorry, it does. I could throttle my father. I could throttle him. And he's still alive. Yes, I got in touch with him recently, but I'll tell you about that at a later date. Time went by. My mother's parents, my grandparents, did all they could to help us. They helped my mum with money initially to get the flat decorated. In those days, you see, 1972, landlords got away with blue murder, sometimes quite literally. And they didn't have there weren't the rules and regulations. Well, obviously there were rules and regulations, but they weren't as strict as they are today. There weren't all that they didn't have to do safety checks on the gas supply. Nothing like that, you see. They got away with it in those days. But my grandparents were very supportive and wonderful, even though they didn't actually speak to my father. And I remember oh God, look at the time already. I remember one Sunday morning specifically, they came to the house and my father was stood in the kitchen and they walked straight past him. They didn't even look at him. And I remember him saying hello, good morning, and they didn't reply, they just walked straight through. And they went through to see my mother and sat down with my mother and spoke with her. And then my father put his head round the door and he said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" To which they replied, "If you're making it, no thank you." So it was, there was a lot of tension. But my father betrayed us again and disappeared again. I'll talk about that in my next video, and my mother's decision to finally break free from my father. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. This is Lawrence. Good afternoon.